Mandy Meisner was re-elected to the Anoka County Board of Commissions in November for her second term, and she is the commissioner of the areas of Fridley, Columbia Heights, and Hilltop.
You got it.
All right. Let's start by getting to know Mandy Meisner. Where did you grow up? When did you come to Fridley? Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. And I would like to start off, you mentioned that I won my re-election in 2022. So thank you to everyone who voted for me. I do not take that for granted. So it is a privilege and honor to be the commissioner for this area. As far as a little bit about myself, I grew up in Cloquet, Minnesota, which is a small town up by Duluth, until I was about 10. But both of my parents, all of my family roots are in Cloquet, Minnesota. So when I was 10, my dad got a job transfer here to the Twin Cities. I lived in Oakdale for most of my older childhood. And then I have been in Fridley, though, for, let me see here, 23 years. So, yes.
How did you first come involved with community events or community service?
Well, actually, that is a great question, and it really brings me to the city of Fridley. So, as you know, Mayor Scott Lund, who I think has been the mayor for, 18 years, 16 years, quite some time. So I've been a resident of Fridley for about 23 years, and so some of my first interactions with both community service and then also with local government was through Scott Lund. So at that time, I had just kind of gotten involved, was interested and curious about doing a couple things. And Scott, as you know, is a very involved mayor. So through him, I kind of got involved through things like Springbrook Nature Center. And then as my children were growing older, I definitely had more time and capacity to be involved in the community. So that's where I ended up landing a lot of my time and my attention, and I was really lucky that I was able to do that. But community service has been my heart for a long time. That is really my history before becoming a commissioner. So through that is my heart and my passion for just advocating for folks in my own backyard, as well as speaking up for those who are not in the room. So that is really what I am good at and what I've been doing.
Were you involved in any community organizations?
Well, community organizations, yes. So the nonprofit sector has kind of been, like I said, where I've naturally gravitated for. So the Mercy Hospital Foundation, I've been on that board for maybe 8 years. Springbrook Nature Center, I have been involved for quite some time. Also Banfield Center, now it's called the North Suburban Center for Arts, but they used to be the Banfield Center for Arts. Alexandra House, Sacred Food Shelf, which is based in Columbia Heights. So a lot of these nonprofits, as well as many others in the North Metro area. But I've been involved in those for a long time. And then I was lucky because one of my last professional jobs before I became a commissioner was at North Metro Mayors Association. So my job was to do community partnerships, which is where I had spent a lot of time. So that was a good fit for me. But through that, I was really able to see there were 16 North Metro cities as members at that time. So really being able to see, well, what does local government look like? Now this is what city level, right? So, but what is it like to be a mayor and city operations, and what are the challenges that each city has that's unique? So through that, I was able to just kind of get a really good education in terms of local government. So I knew for myself that was where, if I was ever going to run for office, I would end up being as local government for sure.
Okay, and that leads us into the next question. Why did you decide to run for Anoka County Commissioners, and what were some of the factors involved in your decision?
Well, you know what, I am very different in a lot of politicians that you'll probably talk to. This is not good or bad, but usually if a person is interested in politics, there's a whole infrastructure around that, right? You maybe start out with a school board or city council, and then move on. So I had no political background whatsoever. I did have a lot of experience in community service, and then for us, for our district, the Cordiac seat. So it was Al Kordiak, who was the founder of the Anoka County Park System. He was there for 34 years. Then his son, Jim, was the commissioner after that for 34 years. So for 64 years, I think, in total, there was a Kordiak in this commissioner's seat. So when Jim decided to retire, there was now just suddenly this opportunity. So I mentioned I worked at North Metro Mayors previously, so I did know that local government was where I was interested only in serving. And then the county government role was especially interesting to me because nobody knows what a county commissioner does. It is known as the invisible layer of government for that reason. So for me, that really appealed to myself because, I mean, I loved doing the work, the boots on the ground. I didn't care so much if there was, the title or the spotlight. So it was like this really interesting, perfect niche. But I didn't even really consider it until that seat became open. I don't think anybody would think about running against Jim Kordiak. He served us well. He was beloved. He was well known. But when he did decide to retire, then that opportunity became available. And after speaking with a lot of people in politics, mostly women, I was like, all right, I've never served before in this capacity. Is this something that I can do? What does this look like? So after doing my own personal research, I decided, all right, I'm going to go for it. So I ran in 2018.
Okay, so between the Kordiaks and you pretty much covered the entire time that Fridley was a city.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool.
Well, and so my district, District 7, is, you mentioned Fridley, Columbia Heights, and Hilltop, but they're all very unique cities because Fridley is a charter city as well as Columbia Heights, and then Hilltop is a very unique city as well. So most cities are statutory cities, but charter cities are a little bit different. So I kind of like to talk about that because it's unique.
Okay. Speaking of redistricting, Anoka County went through redistricting like almost the entire country did after the census. And it changed your district from District 4 to District 7.
Yep.
How did that change affect you?
The numeric difference did not at all, except of course I'm just, if you look on the website, instead of 4, I'm 7. But that was like an interesting story. And then you're right. So the redistricting happened, the census happens every decade. So every decade we try to figure out, all right, what do communities really look like, and making sure that we have the correct representation on all levels of government. So for the county, same sort of thing. If there's 7 commissioners in total for Anoka County, and we all have to represent roughly the same population. We can't be, I believe it's a 5% difference, either ahead or below. So no one can have, representing 20,000 more people than another commissioner. So we're all relatively equal. But through that process, then, if one commissioner or one district kind of gets change, then we all sort of have to figure out what the equilibrium for that is. So that is what happened to Anoka County. All 7 commissioners did have to run again, even if they just won their reelection 2 years ago. We have a 4-year term. So so all 7 of us were up. But the reason that my number got changed is apparently, so if you look at the map of Anoka County, in the way it used to be originally, it looked kind of like a semicircle or a swirl. Mm-hmm. And I guess in some statute somewhere, it should look more linear visually. And so that was the reasoning that we changed the district numbers. It was simply because on a large scale map and kind of looking across that, you wanted a little bit more of a consistent linear thing than like this swirl district. The district's shapes were getting a little bit convoluted. So that's why we changed the number. That was the only reason. So I believe now that this should stay in place for, 50 years or more. Yeah.
Yeah, and because of your area almost looks like an add-on. to the county. So
Yes.
yeah.
Well, actually, I'm glad that you brought that up because my colleagues tease me a little bit. So again, if you look at the map of Anoka County, the physical footprint, mine is the smallest. And you're right, I have like a little peninsula sticking out at the end of Anoka County. But I always make sure to tell everybody, to the public, that even though my physical footprint is the smallest, I represent the same amount of people. So that means that I just happen to have the most urban district, also the most diverse district. So I take a lot of pride in that. That comes with a lot of unique needs that our district has for Southern Anoka County. And it's important to understand that and be able to bring that to my colleagues and talk about some of the different needs that I have than Ham Lake or Now Then, which looks, very different.
Right. So what are some of the unique differences to District 7 versus some of them, like up north, is farmland?
Yeah, 100%. Well, that is a great question. And as I mentioned, so I represent the most urban and the most diverse district in the county. So District 7 is a state-recognized underserved community. So we've got multiple languages, multiple cultures. We actually have a really healthy new American population here, both in Fridley and Columbia Heights. So those are really unique because, as you mentioned, you look at Ramsey, the city of Ramsey, or Now Then, and it's more rural. Typically, I would say the main difference is if you go rural and up north, people really appreciate and they want to be sort of quote unquote left alone. They really like their land and they just kind of want to do whatever they want. Here it's very different. I think that we are a close-knit community and we have different pockets of them all living side by side. So both of those aspects should be really respected, in my opinion, meaning that you want to honor all the different voices and the cultures that we do have, because that is, in my opinion, such a huge plus. But you also want to make sure that as a county commissioner, I'm able to see the big picture and able to deliver services that can, first of all, serve everybody, but then what are the nooks and crannies that I can maybe make those connections that people aren't necessarily seeing. So for me, that's kind of the perspective that I come from. But yeah, so very, very different than other parts of the county, which I love.
Okay. Well, let's get into the roles of a commissioner. A lot of people see that you go to a board meeting twice a month.
Yep.
Is that all you do?
No, that is a great question because you're right. That is typically what the public sees. If they're paying attention at all, I think there's 12 people that probably watch a board meeting. But yeah, so our board meetings, they happen twice a month, as you mentioned. It's the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month. And that's where we really ratify all of the work that has been done previously. So for Anoka County, and not all counties are set up this way, but this is how Anoka County's model is. And we have a committee structure. We model very much like after the state legislature. So we have committees, anywhere from 3 commissioners to 4 commissioners right now. And for the county committees, they range, I believe that there is a total of 13 total. 9 really are regular and meet every month. So the 7 of us are divided into those, I'm just going to call it 9 committees that are working every month. And then you're assigned to that. Now for myself, I don't attend all of them, but the committees sometimes that I'm not assigned to, our board chair gets to decide that. I do attend those meetings even if I'm not assigned, just because it's really important work. Transportation would be one of those examples where transportation for the county, for the region, for the state and nationally is something that you want to be knowledgeable in, understand the projects, and then figure out how to get those funding mechanisms, as well as be able to communicate to your community about it. So that is one of the committees that I attend on a regular basis, as an example, that I'm not assigned to. But all of that work really happens before the board meetings. And then the board meeting is when you report, you're able to discuss it as the full body, and then you ratify all of those actual decisions.
Are them meetings open to the public? Are they published somewhere or anything like that?
So all of our county committee meetings, they are open to the public. You do have to come there physically for the most part to see that. That's something that I've been very vocal about, especially after the pandemic. We've got 2023 technology. My opinion is that we have this technology. Let's make this accessible to the public because we did do it when the pandemic was happening. So, for me, it's like if you can't physically get down there, they're always during the daytime hours, right? So people are usually working, or some people just aren't mobile. Whatever your situation might be, where you're interested but you can't physically get down there. I do think we could be doing more for the public, so I'm pretty consistent about that. But yes, they're always posted. Anyone is able to come to a committee meeting. Anyone is able to make public comment there. And then, I forgot to mention too, so those are the committees for Anoka County. Then we also have, I don't know, 6 to 8 other regional committees that we serve on. So one of the ones that I'm assigned to is the Metropolitan Emergency Service Board. So that is where essentially the metro counties come, not all the commissioners, but 2 from each metro area, and we come and we talk about what's happening with the 911 communication system, how are dispatch centers being funded, what are the keys to make sure that whether you live here in the metro area in Minnesota or you have a cabin way up north, if you call 911, are you getting that same response and service? So that would be another example that I forgot in terms of all commissioners are assigned to various regional work, and then as well as statewide as well. So yeah.
So what other committees or commissions are you on? What are like your favorite ones?
Oh, my favorite ones. That's hard for me to answer because I will tell you, I learned very quickly that there is honor and importance in all work at the county. I mean that anywhere from facilities, and they're literally building or maintaining our buildings, or making sure that they're clean and they're safe, to transportation, which is a huge committee to be part of. But I will say that human services is my heart. So human services is where all of medical assistance, child protection, all the services that people who are in vulnerable places or seasons in their life, they need that help and that support. So that's where human services come in. So I will say, like, of all the committees, human services is probably most where my heart lives. But IT is another committee that I'm absolutely fascinated about, information technology, because it is ever-changing all of the time, and it's becoming more and more important for security as we're getting away from paper and like filing cabinets, right? Like back in the day of 50 years ago, well, how are you going to maintain information, really sensitive information about people? And you think about our attorney's office as well as our sheriff's office, all of that information falls under the umbrella of the county board. How do you keep that intact and safe and accessible, though, when you need it, when you're going to trial or that kind of thing? So IT would be another example of just something that I'm personally super fascinated with, and continue to get educated.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned about the 911 committee that you're on, the regional one or
Yep,
something?
so that, yep.
And I see that we're finally moving the Anoka County 911 out of the cellar.
Yes, I know.
And that's
Out of the
new.
basement,
You want us
I
to
know.
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we just broke ground on that a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact, and you're right. So the 911 dispatch center, which is where all the calls in Anoka County come, okay, they go there, and then the center dispatches them to, are you in Fridley, are you in Columbia Heights, are you in Ramsey, now then, wherever it is, and they make sure that what is this call about, and then making sure that then the service providers, the first responders, get out there. But they have lived in our basement of the government center. So not only is it, okay, I'm gonna back up. So if you're a 911 dispatch worker, employee, I mean, that work is extremely taxing, all right? You are secondary trauma. You are listening every day to these really hard, horrific calls of people in emergency. So you're dealing with that emotionally and mentally, and you know, professionally having to deal with that. And when you're so when you're in a basement. And as an employer, I think that the very least that we can do as an employer is provide a space that feels good for this very hard work. So they are moving, and it's going to be, I think, 45,000 square feet. It's going to be modern, so the technology is going to be up to date, which is great. And then just they'll have windows, you know, and they'll have the space to work, as well as there's actual pods where they can have a mental health break, right? They can go to a quiet room, kind of decompress, just sort of, you know, maybe just process whatever call that they were just on, that kind of a thing, which is really important. And they do not have that now. I mean, right now it is just like sardines, people working on top of each other. Yeah, very difficult.
Okay. Well, I think it's important that we're getting modernized in the 911 era section, because you know, like you said, it's a very difficult job. I've known people who have done it, and
Oh, okay, yeah.
So yeah, they should at least get some sunlight.
Yep.
You know,
100%.
even in the winter, it's nice to have a little sunlight or something.
Well, you know, and that's one of the things too about being a commissioner that I talk a lot about that I didn't really realize until I was here. But I mentioned that as an employer. So in Anoka County, we have approximately 2,000 employees. We're one of the biggest employers of the region. And most people don't really think, I'm going to work for the county someday, right? But you name it, whatever kind of speaks to you as a person in profession, we have it. You want to be a mechanic and work on our fleet, you can do that. You want to go to college and be an attorney, you can do that. You want to go into law enforcement and be one of the deputies for our sheriff's office, you can do that. Social work, right? You can do that. So all of these things, I mean, literally every profession pretty much under the sun, we have it at Anoka County. So I talk about that quite a bit because it's a great place to work. It's a good place to build a career, and people just don't necessarily think about it. But it is a place that I always tell our young people that, well, what is it that you're interested in? And 9 times out of 10, whatever the answer is, well, think about working for Anoka County someday. Yes.
You have it there. Okay.
Yep.
Let's move on a little bit. What is your connection to, say, the state representatives of the area? How do you work with them?
Yeah. Ooh, I love this question. It's an interesting one too. So counties are literal creations of the state. So all of our state representatives, they make the laws, right? Every session. That's what they're wrapping up right now. So they make the laws, but who implements them are the counties. So there's 87 counties in the state of Minnesota, and that's our job. We take the laws and we make sure that those services are delivered to people who live in our own backyard. So you would think that we'd have more of a direct relationship with the state. We don't really. So I'm lucky. So our state representatives here, that would be Sandra Feist, Aaron Cagle, Mary Knusch is our senator. So I do have great working relationships with them, but unless you really take time to sort of foster that, it's kind of a as needed basis. So, and then I would say usually our most interactions are usually during session. So as they're trying to pass bills, commissioners will say, oh, well, I'll just speak for myself. That's a great intention, Representative, but you know what? The implementation of it, there's a little bit of a challenge, and let me talk to you about that. And so now is the time when those conversations are happening. Representatives still get to decide that, and then we just have to abide by their laws.
Right.
But I'm a big believer in just good communication and being upfront, and having those conversations before any laws are passed, if that's possible. It doesn't always work out that way, but I try.
Yeah, that's true. At most levels of government, we have a level above telling us what we have to do.
100%. That's the way it always
So,
is.
yeah.
Yep, the hierarchy for sure.
Right, yeah.
So for county, it's cities a lot of the times. Now cities still have their own jurisdiction, but there's overlap. And so for myself, I have practiced since being a commissioner in meeting about once a quarter with all of my district cities. And for coffee, I don't really have an agenda. I just want to make sure that I'm giving updates and I'm listening to updates because there's a lot of overlapping projects that sometimes I can really help them. Or for me, if I just want to know about, right? So then, in the future, if an opportunity happens where, oh, there's this funding grant from the county that you could qualify for, I already know that, and I'm able to say, hey, Brian, remember that project that you told me about 3 months ago? Why don't you apply for this grant? I think you'd have a good chance at securing funds. Yeah.
So it's good to have a good working relationship with other governmental bodies.
100%.
How about water districts? Do you deal with them at all?
Oh my gosh. Well, water districts, okay, so the county actually, our job is to appoint watershed district members, but they are their own jurisdiction. That is something that I'm trying to get more educated on. I don't know a whole lot, honestly, about how watershed districts operate because they do a lot of important work, and it's kind of balanced between environmental issues and development, right? So any city that has to or wants to develop, you have to make sure that it's the watershed district. It's okay to do that, right? What am I trying to say? Because as you're building and you're building on ground, that's going to affect the watershed when you're having concrete and pavement and things of that nature. So those are the things I'm not as knowledgeable on, but I am working on that, as well as, like I said, we have an interesting relationship because even though we appoint the members there, we don't really, then once we do that, we're kind of hands off and that sort of thing. But we do interact with them from time to time for sure.
Okay. So you work with a lot of government bodies, including Fridley. So what, more specifically, what kind of service does Fridley get from you as a commissioner?
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know if they don't get any advantage in terms of service from the county, right? Because we all provide equal services to everybody. However, I live in Fridley, so just out of nature, it's I actually live in the new development right next door here.
Yeah.
So just out of nature, I'm able to be in touch with Fridley in general. So I meet with the officials, like I said, once a quarter, but I make sure that I'm at the town hall meetings, not only as a commissioner, but as a resident. It's yeah, what's happening in the city of Fridley? And they do that once a year. As I mentioned, since I live here, it's just a lot more natural for me to be in the community, hear what's happening. So in terms of just myself being informed, I feel like I definitely have an advantage. And then I of course care very much about at the county level as a commissioner. Am I able to be at the table and make sure that the city of Fridley is represented when those projects arise?
Okay. So, what part of being a commissioner do you really enjoy the most?
Yeah, that is a good question. Honestly, who I am as a connector and a collaborator. So that is what I enjoy the most is really, what is the big picture? So that's my job, good governance. But then how can I connect the dots for people that I know and talk to and make sure that there is accessibility and just having them know, did you know that we have this program? Did you know that we have this grant? Did you know that we have this resource? Because again, county government, most people can't tell you much about county government, but we have libraries and we have our own transportation system. We have a career force, which is all about workforce and getting credentialed around that. So we have all these pockets of resources for the community, a lot of times for free. and people just don't know about that. And so that is what I love best is, like I said, connecting all of that and collaborating. I'm a team player, so I am most myself when I'm part of a team, whether that's at the county board or at a community function, but that is really what I love the best.
Talking about things you enjoy, what do you do if you have any spare time? What do you do to go out and enjoy life?
Yeah. So I am a creative at heart. I actually graduated from the Purpose Center for Arts Education in Golden Valley, so I studied classical music at the time. But really, I really enjoy the creative. So I like writing. I'm a blogger, and I blog currently for the Minnesota Orchestra as well as a business that I'm part of. I am one of 9 women owners of the Guest House in Excelsior, which is a rental property for retreats or vacations, whatever you want, but it's in downtown Excelsior, really beautiful, historic building. But I get to be the blogger for that business. Listening to music, playing music. So did I mention reading? I love reading as well. So really anything that's creative, and then dance. So I love taking ballet. Ballet and jazz are my favorite, just for exercise, and then just the art form of it is really great.
Okay. Snowboarding?
No, I am like so unathletic. I don't have good hand-eye coordination as far as like balls or sports or anything like that. No, it's always the creatives that I tend to gravitate for. So, oh, and then like walking too. So again, I live right over here. I'm live along the Rice Creek Trail, and starting now, I will walk until it starts snowing. And there's like a 5-mile loop, and it's just really, really beautiful.
So what's your instrument of choice?
Flute.
Flute, okay.
Mm-hmm. I wish I could sing. But I can't, alas, I cannot.
Will we hear you out on the patio some night when you're playing your flute?
Well, I mean, my neighbors can hear me sometimes if my windows are open practicing, but I get the reverse, where you guys have these amazing live concerts, and so I get to listen from either my deck or I'll go to my neighbor's patio and listen from there. But they're really enjoyed. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Mandy. How can your constituents get a hold of you and follow your activities, whether it be bowling or
or commissioner
work?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure just to get to know you a little bit and talk a little bit about myself. So yes, people can get in touch with me a couple of different ways. My official commissioner email is Mandy, Mandy.Meisner, Meisner, @co.anoka.mn.us. Kind of long, or you can just look at the Anoka County website, look me up. And then as well as to follow me, I have a commissioner Facebook page, which is Anoka County Commissioner Mandy Meisner, or I have a personal Facebook page, which is Mandy Meisner. But either one of those 2 platforms, I'm also on LinkedIn. But I definitely welcome anyone to reach out for me at any time. And then my cell phone is 763-226-1809, and people are more than welcome to give me a call.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mandy, for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you out and about in the community. You usually do.
Yes, you do. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it. Okay.
This has been a production of Fridley Municipal Television. Thanks for watching.